There is a pipe buried under farmhouses in Pennsylvania that has been cooling homes since 1743. No compressor, no refrigerant, no electricity bill, no moving parts except air. Your government documented it, published the blueprint, distributed it to every agricultural extension office in America, and then watched it disappear from every building code written after 1960, while a 200 billion industry grew up in the exact space it left behind. I am going to show you the document. I am going to show you who buried it. And I am going to show you how to build it this weekend for $300. 4 feet below the surface of your backyard, the soil holds a nearly constant temperature of 55 degrees F. It did this last July when your surface hit 105 degrees. It did this last January when the surface dropped to 15 below. The ground doesn't register either extreme. That stability isn't an approximation or a regional quirk. It has been continuously measured on real homes across 3 continents for more than 50 years, and the number holds everywhere from Ontario to southern Germany to rural Ohio. Here is why, and this is the part your cooling contractor will never explain, because once you understand it, you stop thinking about compressors entirely. Soil isn't just a thermal battery. It's a low-pass filter. The sun drives a temperature wave through the surface of the earth every year. Summer roasts the top layer. Winter freezes it, but that wave doesn't travel straight down at full strength. It weakens as it descends, and it slows. Scientists call this thermal diffusivity. For moist soil, the value is roughly half a millimeter squared per second, a number that sounds trivial until you understand what it means in practice. That summer heat wave on the surface takes months to reach 4 feet down. By the time July's warmth actually arrives at the pipe, it's already October and the surface has cooled back off. The soil around your buried tube is running 6 months behind the weather above it at every moment of the year, which means the cool air blowing out of your return vent on July 15th is not some vague background temperature. It is this past February's cold, stored underground in slow motion, delivered exactly when you need it. Your backyard is not a freezer. It is a time machine. The summer stores next January's cold. The winter delivers this July's cool air. The pipe is the wire connecting those 2 moments, and the wire costs $90 at a hardware store. Americans spend $29 billion every year running residential air conditioning. That works out to roughly $700, $740 per household every summer. Over a decade, a family in a hot climate hands $7,400 to the utility company to solve a problem the dirt under their lawn has already solved for free. That $740 figure doesn't include the equipment. It doesn't include the installation. It doesn't include the service call when the capacitor burns out in August, the refrigerant recharge, the coil cleaning, the filter replacement the technician upsells while he's already in your attic. Stack every honest expense over 10 years and the real cost of residential central air conditioning for a typical household lands closer to dollars under dollar. A buried pipe solves the same physics problem for $300 in parts and 1 weekend of labor. Not a partial solution, not a supplement that barely touches the bill. A conservation research site in southern Ontario ran continuous monitoring on earth tubes buried 2 meters deep across 9 different test configurations. Outside air entered the pipe on a 90 degrees F July afternoon. It exited at 59 degrees F. A 31-degree drop with no compressor, no refrigerant, and no electricity beyond the fan that costs less to run than the nightlight in a child's bedroom. They ran that system through 8 Ontario summers. It never underperformed. And unlike every mechanical cooling system you have ever owned, it did not degrade. It got more efficient for the first 3 years as the soil thermally adjusted around the pipe, then held that ceiling for the life of the installation. A compressor starts dying the day you turn it on. A buried pipe gets better. In 1947, the United States Department of Agriculture published Farmer's Bulletin number 1918. The title was Ventilation of Farm Buildings. Inside that bulletin, in plain language with imperial and metric dimensions side by side, was a complete technical specification for underground air inlets, burial depth, pipe diameter range, intake placement, slope requirement for drainage. Everything a person with no trade background needed to build a functional earth-coupled cooling system on a working farm. The federal government printed it. Agricultural extension offices distributed it across all 48 states. It cost 15 cents. By 1960, it had quietly vanished from every major building guide in America. The timeline of that disappearance is not random. Natural gas infrastructure expanded through the American Midwest between 1950 and 1970. Pipelines reached every small town in the region by 1963. Gas furnaces became the default residential heating option almost overnight, backed by utility financing programs that made installation nearly free up front. Forced air central cooling followed through the 1960s as electric utilities pushed summer load onto residential customers. Every piece of that rollout had an industry advocate, a manufacturer, a financing chain, and a lobbyist making sure it got written into building code. The underground earth tube had none of those. It required no utility connection. It generated no ongoing revenue. It had no industry to advocate for it. So it fell out of the manuals, not banned, not disproven, just quietly removed from the conversation while the infrastructure that replaced it was subsidized into every new home built in America. But the knowledge didn't disappear entirely. It survived in the one community that had no financial reason to abandon it. Walk into an Amish farmhouse in Holmes County, Ohio on a 95 degrees F August afternoon. The air inside is cool, still, quiet. No humming machine anywhere in the walls. The temperature feels wrong in the best possible way. The air traveled 40 feet through a clay pipe buried 5 feet under the garden. It arrived in the kitchen 20 degrees cooler than the afternoon outside. The pipe has been in continuous operation for generations. The clay has crumbled in some of the oldest installations, but the pipe roots and intake openings are still visible in the stone foundations of farmhouses built in Lancaster County in the early 1700s. The knowledge came with German-speaking settlers who carried it from the Rhine Valley. A German architect named Heinrich Scheller documented these systems in technical detail in 1897 underground air tempering tunnels running through stone foundations, some continuously operating since the early 1700s. The physics he described in 1897 is identical to what the Ontario researchers measured 120 years later. The Amish didn't preserve this out of nostalgia. They preserved it because it works, because it costs nothing to operate, and because it answers to no utility company in any season. That last quality is precisely why the rest of the country was steered away from it. In March of 2020, the American Gas Association held an internal planning meeting. The minutes from that meeting became public through investigative reporting. In those minutes, the association named passive thermal alternative systems, exactly like the earth tube, as an existential threat to natural gas use in residential buildings. Their documented response was not to compete on price or performance. It was to legislate the alternatives out of the conversation. What followed is not a theory. It has a paper trail. Since 2020, the gas industry and aligned trade groups have pushed preemption bills through more than 25 state legislatures. Those bills prevent cities and towns from encouraging, permitting, or even referencing passive thermal systems through local building code. When researchers ran the text of those bills through plagiarism detection software, the results were embarrassing. Nearly identical language had been introduced by different legislators in Utah, Texas, Arizona, and Louisiana within weeks of each other. One Utah representative, when asked directly where the bill originated, admitted he became aware of it from his local gas supplier. The main cooling industry trade body, representing nearly every major residential air conditioning manufacturer in the country, has spent decades blocking any building code category that would classify a passive earth-coupled cooling pipe as a recognized alternative system. No category means no approval pathway. No approval pathway means no contractor will quote it. No contractor quotes it, and the average homeowner never hears it exists. That is how you erase a free technology without banning it outright. Not a conspiracy theory. A documented legislative strategy with named participants and matching bill language across 25 states. The combined American heating and cooling equipment industry generates over $200 billion annually. That number includes original equipment sales, the repair cycle, refrigerant, warranty extensions, and the utility share tied to running the systems every summer. A $300 buried pipe threatens every single revenue line on that list. Every time earth tubes come up in a building science discussion, one objection arrives before anything else: mold. The argument is technically coherent. Warm, humid outside air enters a cool pipe. Water vapor condenses on the interior wall. In a poorly designed system, that condensate pools at low points and becomes a biological habitat. The critique is real, and cooling industry consultants deploy it constantly because it sounds definitive. Here is what those consultants never mention in the same breath. The Amish solved this problem in the 1700s. The solution is a slope. The pipe must run continuously downhill from the house end toward the outdoor intake, with no low points where water can collect. 1 inch of drop for every 10 feet of pipe, less than 1% grade. The intake end sits over a drainage point, either a gravel bed in older installations or a simple trap and cleanout in modern ones. Any condensate that forms runs out of the pipe before it can pool. Without pooled water, There is no microbial habitat. The European Passive House Institute ran a 5-year continuous operation study on properly drained earth tube systems across multiple Central European climates. Air samples pulled from the pipe outlets at the end of year 5 showed microbiological activity statistically indistinguishable from outdoor ambient air. Clean, documented, settled. The mold objection is a design problem, not a technology problem. The industry presents it as the latter, because the former has a 300-year-old solution that costs nothing extra to implement. The materials list is almost insulting in its simplicity. 40 feet of 8-inch smooth-bore PVC pipe, $60 to $90 depending on your hardware store. A screened intake cap, 12. An inline duct fan that moves air through the pipe continuously. 40 consuming roughly the same electricity as a single incandescent bulb. A drain trap at the low end. Dollar end. Pipe couplings, primer, and mastic sealant round the total to somewhere between $250 and $300. That's the entire system. No compressor, no refrigerant, no certification required to purchase any of it. Here is how you put it together. Rent a walk-behind trencher from any equipment yard, roughly $120 for a half day. A walk-behind machine cuts a 40-foot trench 4 feet deep through an average suburban yard in about 2 hours. One person, no excavation contractor required. Lay the pipe in the trench sloping continuously from the house end downward toward the outdoor intake. 1 inch of drop per 10 feet of run. No exceptions, no low points. This is the only detail the installation cannot tolerate getting wrong. The outdoor intake end gets the screened cap to keep animals and debris out. It sits over a gravel drainage bed or a simple cleanout trap, your choice, based on what your local soil drains like. The indoor end connects to your existing cold air return duct. Cut a rectangular opening in the return, flange the pipe end, seal the joint with duct mastic. Done. The existing system blower draws pre-cooled earth-tempered air through the pipe the moment the air handler comes on. If your home uses window units or mini splits instead of central air, the earth tube feeds a dedicated ventilation register in 1 or 2 rooms. The compressor only handles the last few degrees. It runs a fraction as often. Your electricity bill shows the difference within the first summer. Mount the inline fan at the house end as a dedicated low-speed draw. It runs continuously at low power to keep the pipe air moving even when the main system is off. This prevents stagnation and is the detail most DIY installs skip, then regret. Backfill the trench. Reseed the lawn if needed. Start to finish, one competent person with no trade background completes this in a single weekend, on permits. In most states, the system is classified as passive ventilation, not heating or cooling equipment. No permit required. That is the quiet legal gap every preemption bill targeting passive thermal alternatives forgot to close, because no lobbyist ever expected a homeowner to actually build one. The Ontario research site measured a 31-degree air temperature drop across a 20-meter tube on a 90 degrees F day. A 40-foot residential install in most American climates delivers between 15 and 25 degrees of pre-cooling on the hottest afternoons of the year. That does not mean the pipe replaces your air conditioner entirely in a Phoenix summer. It means your compressor starts with air that is already 20 degrees closer to your target temperature before it does any work at all. The system runs hardest exactly when the grid is most stressed peak afternoon heat and draws almost no electricity doing it. No demand charges, no peak rate billing, no compressor cycling on 105 degrees F afternoon pulling maximum amperage through aging wiring. Year 1 performance is good. Year 2 is better. Year 3, the soil has fully adjusted its thermal profile around the pipe and the system reaches its sealing efficiency, where it then stays unchanged for the life of the pipe. PVC pipe buried 4 feet down in stable soil has a measured service life exceeding 50 years. There are no moving parts to wear out except the inline fan, which is a standard commodity part available at any HVAC supplier for 40 and replaceable in 20 minutes. The 1947 USDA bulletin your government published and then quietly stopped distributing described all of this. The German settlers who carried it from the Rhine Valley to Lancaster County understood all of this. The Amish farmhouses in Holmes County, Ohio, that have been running clay pipe earth systems since before the American Revolution demonstrate all of this. The only thing that changed between 1743 and today is that a 200 billion industry grew up in the space the knowledge left behind. The pipe is still 90. The trench is still 4 feet deep. The physics is still free. $300 in parts. 1 weekend. No moving parts except a $1.40 fan. And a cooling mechanism that doesn't ask your utility company for permission, doesn't generate a service call, and doesn't carry a warranty that expires 13 months after installation. The blueprint has existed since 1947. The clay pipe versions have been running since 1743. The government published it, the industry buried it, and the Amish never stopped using it. Now you have the document number, the build list, and the one slope measurement that makes the whole thing work. The only thing left is the trench.